I was first involved in the campaign to repeal the Eighth Amendment as a student. I was elected president of Trinity Students' Union in 1989, and the Society for the Protection of the Unborn Child, or SPUC, had already initiated a series of court cases against students' unions, against women's health centres and clinics, anyone who was providing information on abortion to women in a crisis pregnancy. I was president of the Students' Union. We were mandated by our students to give information to women in crisis pregnancy, but by 1989, no other organisations except students' unions were continuing to provide that information because we knew we risked court action. So in September '89, when we published our union guidebook and started distributing it on campus with the phone numbers of clinics in it, SPUC then moved into the courts, took an injunction out against us and threatened us with a penal notice, in other words with prison, if we continued to provide the handbooks to our students in contempt of court. Now we decided we would defy the court order and we would continue to hand out the guidebooks. We did that. We were taken to court. Our legal team, led by Mary Robinson, who was then a law lecturer of mine as well as a barrister, they advised us we would be going to prison. So it was a frightening time. Mary Robinson's very brilliant legal arguments based on European community law, as it then was, kept us out of prison. So the High Court actually passed the case onto the European Court of Justice, and it rumbled on for a further 7 or 8 years, during which time we were declared bankrupt because of the costs awarded against us, and so on. But it did keep us out of prison, and it did mean that we had taken a very proud stance. I'm still very proud of the stance students took, and that we were backed by our own student body in doing so. I think the hardest part for me was actually what you might call the desert years, the years after the '02 referendum, where we'd seen off the threat of rowing back the X case and going backwards, but we weren't making any progress. And I remember at one press conference where I was actually pregnant with my first daughter and being physically threatened, and a group of anti-choice people invaded the space we were in, the hotel we were in, and it just felt particularly disheartening that we had so little political support. We were under such pressure from a very, very confident anti-choice movement who really thought they could hold a line in Ireland forever and that we were never going to have legal abortion here. I think the enormous resounding support for repeal that became evident in 2018 in the referendum, 66.4%, never get tired of saying that, that really I think shows how much people have changed in their view, how they now came to recognise that the Eighth Amendment did amount to a devaluing of women's lives, that it essentially was forcing women to travel, it was forcing what many have described as an English solution to an Irish problem, and that it hadn't made it go away, because the Eighth Amendment hadn't actually stopped crisis pregnancy. If anything, it had just made the whole experience of crisis pregnancy so much harder, so much more traumatic for so many women, compounded the crisis of a crisis pregnancy. And yet it hadn't stopped women becoming pregnant, clearly. It hadn't saved fetal lives in reality, and I think all of that made people see that actually it was a text that had become outdated. Well, some of us felt it was never in date, but a text that had no longer any place in a modern progressive republic. I think the decision of the people in 2015 to support marriage equality showed that change was already coming about, that people were willing to see themselves as a much more tolerant, much more pluralist society than we had previously been.